So this is Aunt Barbara again. She's doing another interview for the Old Soul series.
Yeah.
That everybody seems to like so much. So we're going to talk about what today?
Yeah, we're talking about school. Yeah.
School and...
one-room schools. Growing up with the one-room school.
I bet you those who have seen my other videos know why we're talking about one-room schools. Right? Take it away.
I'm going to tell you about one-room schoolhouse. Yeah.
So you went to a school that was one room?
Yeah, I went to school with, a one-room schoolhouse for 6 grades.
6 grades?
Yeah, we didn't have kindergarten in those days. Mm-hmm. So you started school at 6 years old in 1st grade.
Did you have all the grades in at one time?
All the grades in one school.
Yeah.
One school room.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
One teacher.
One teacher. Yes. And so you learned a lot if you were paying attention, because she was teaching each grade separately. Mm-hmm. And everyone had their things to do while the teacher was teaching. But if you had your ears open and your eyes open, you'd catch, what was going on, especially in the older grades, if you were, curious enough. Anyway, she would give us our lessons and then write them on the board. And you had to take your notes from the board. And we all had our books, our own textbooks. And when they would give you your textbook, the first thing that you had to do in the fall was to take your textbooks home and put covers on them. Mm-hmm. So we always put covers on them from brown paper, folded in a certain way and round the thing and sleeve, the covers in, and which was nice because if you were a doodler like I was, you'd be doodling on the outside of those covers all year long. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'd even have to change them in the,
Yeah. We did the same thing in the 80s.
Yeah. So I had, you had to carry your books after you got older, and you were carrying your notebooks home and your textbooks home. My uncle had an old book bag that had been his going to school. He was 15 years older than me, so the book bag was kind of hanging around, and it was quite warm. Leather, black, with straps and buckles, and of course I just loved that because it was his, and I asked him, did he think that I could use it? So he said I could use it as long as I took good care of it. So I was really careful with it, and I moved the strap so that it fit on my shoulders right, and so on and so forth. And I used that, I'd say from 3rd grade to 6th, all the way through, carrying my books back and forth to school. But I'll go back to 1st grade, because 1st grade was quite big change from being home all the time. So anyway, I started 1st grade, and there was no one to walk to school with. I walked 1.5 miles. Of course, the kids always laugh when I say this, 1.5 miles to school, and they say, oh yeah, and all uphill.
Both ways.
Yeah, both ways. So on, but it was. I went to school 1.5 miles from the house. There were no houses on the mile. And after I got around and onto the other road, I had one neighbor. Well, there were 2 neighbors there, 2 brothers that lived, one on each side of their driveway. And I used to go to the house on the left because she always would call me in and say, Barb, come on in and I have milk and cookies, or I have, in the winter she'd give me hot chocolate or something, and dry my mittens or whatever while I was there for half an hour or so, warm me up. That's and nice. Send me on my way. And call my grandmother to tell her that I was on my way home. So they were keeping track of me. So anyway, 1st grade, I can't remember. I think that there were 4 of us. I know that there were 4 of us that started together. All those people are still living. One of them I stay in close contact with. The other 2 I see occasionally. One was a boy, and the other two were girls. So we were like the Three Musketeers. The fourth one was a boy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all claimed him as our boyfriend. It's like, no, he likes me best. No, he likes me best. No. And he probably didn't like any of us very much.
Claimed him. Okay.
But we all thought he was great. So anyway, we would have our school day. We'd carry our lunches to school because it was too far to walk to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the kids would go home because they were closer. Only one would go home that I remember. The rest of us stayed at school and ate our lunch at school.
You were allowed to go home if you could.
You were allowed to go if you could. We had an hour lunch every day. We would try to get to school early so that we would have some time to play before school.
Mm-hmm.
Then during lunch hour, in good weather, we would play jump rope. We had all these little songs that we sang to the jump rope and so on. We played jump rope or a game of some kind, or we had a row of nice big maple trees around the lot, and we would play house in those, rocks and stuff to make boundary, petitions in your house. This is the kitchen, this is this and that. And so we would do that kind of thing. And then as we got older, we played what they called scrub ball. And we didn't have enough kids to have teams. So we would play what they called scrub ball. So you would work your way through the rank of you'd start in the outfield. And as one outfielder got out, you'd move over to the center field, and then you'd move to the right field, and then you would move to pitcher. Mm-hmm. No, you didn't move to pitcher. You would move to the bases. And then you would move to pitcher. And then you would move to catcher. And then you would be the batter.
So it's like a different form of baseball.
So it was a different form of baseball so that everyone could play, but we didn't have teams. Mm-hmm. So when you would have your 3 strikes, you're out. Mm-hmm. You could stay in as a batter as long as you got home. Mm-hmm. And the next batter behind you, so on, drove you home. As long as you got home safe, then you continued to be a batter. Mm-hmm. If someone got out on base, then the next person moved up and was the batter. So that was always fun, and there were no catcher's gloves or anything like that involved. You were barehanded catching that ball. Mm-hmm. I got hit in the head with it one time, knocked me out. Wow, really? Yeah. Well, the ball didn't knock me out. The ball knocked me down. Mm-hmm. But our base was a rock. And I hit my head on the rock and knocked me out. And it's like, okay, bye. Wow. The kids are all around me, wake up. But that hurt really bad. I bet. And one time I got hit in the outfield, catching the ball in the outfield, and it hit me in the head. But it didn't really hurt, it hurt, but it didn't knock me out or anything. Because it was far enough that it wasn't coming as fast. But when you're on base and that ball hits you, I was only on first base, and the ball hit me and down I went. So that was always fun. So scrub ball was the big thing. If we did have enough kids to have a little team, they would choose who they wanted. Like, say 2 of the boys would be the team, leaders, and then they would choose their team. I was always excited because I was usually the first girl that was chosen to play. But I was such a tomboy. Good at the game. Yeah, I was such a tomboy. They figured that, okay, she's a good one to play. Yeah, and in the wintertime, we had a big hill behind the school, and we would take our sleds to school or our toboggan or whatever to school. And we'd get there early so that we could slide in the morning before school started, because school started at 9. Wow. So if we got there, and it was 9 to 4. So we wouldn't get out of school till 4 o'clock. So if we got there, say at 8:30, we had a half hour to slide. Then you'd go in and have your school day. So we would have a recess about like 10 o'clock, 10:30 or so. And we'd be out for like 20 minutes, half hour, jump and roll or whatever we were doing. And back in, so we'd have 2 recesses a day and an hour lunch. So all of those times we would be right on the move. As soon as time was to go out, boom, we're out the door. Lunchtime, we'd eat our lunch and get our clothes on, we'd be out the door. And the teacher would be out there ringing the bell when it was time to come in. We didn't have a bell, you know, mounted bell or anything. She had the big bell with the handle on it. And she'd come out to the front door and ring that bell. We'd all line up and, yeah, and in. And everybody was, you know, we were all pretty disciplined. We would do what we were supposed to be doing, you know. We didn't want to get into any trouble, because then if you got in trouble, then you stayed in for recess, or you stayed in after school or whatever.
Yeah.
So everybody was pretty, you know, minded pretty well. We had a few that were a little, you know, got a little trouble here and there. Not bad though for a whole crowd, for like maybe 30 kids. I don't know, school was fun. We just always had a ball with school. Then they started having, we would carry a cold lunch to school, sandwich and a piece of fruit and something. And then they decided that they were going to have hot lunches for us. So hot lunch was a soup to add to our lunch. So
you would still bring lunch.
You still brought your lunch, but they would include soup.
Okay.
For a hot lunch in the winter, especially.
Was it free?
It was free.
Okay.
Yep. And I think that probably our school committee people decided, okay, well, we're going to do hot lunch for the kids, and raised money.
That's nice.
To do that. So we had a little kitchen in our school, and the 5th and 6th grade girls were the ones that got to fix the soup and for lunch. So it was kind of fun. Like, you looked forward to becoming the older girls that go in and fix lunch and so on. And I remember anytime that we had tomato soup at home, it was usually we added water to our tomato soup at home. Well, they added milk to the tomato soup, which was kind of different. And thought, oh, it was good, but it was just different. But you had to keep it stirred or it would scorch on the bottom. So you were always in that big pan, you know, keeping it stirred. The classes, the teachers would get everyone set up with something. And you didn't have the same routine all the time. You might have writing today, and then your arithmetic class, and then your reading. What I liked, and I didn't really realize it until my younger sisters and brothers got into school, we had the old-fashioned readers, which were, they were real stories and real, like, old-fashioned, how can I put it, poetry by all of the authors, like all of the known authors, and stories about different things like the North Pole and bird going to the North Pole and things like that. And this is what we were learning in our reading, in our literature, until my sisters and brothers started. I was in 4th grade when my sister started school. Up until then, I walked myself alone to school and back every day. My little sister started school, and they changed the curriculum, and they put this new system of reading in, which was supposed to be a better system of learning. I disagree, but who am I?
Somebody who was using it.
And they started with this Dick, Jane, and Sally books. Dick, Jane, and Sally. The dog's name was Spot, and this, that, and everything was repetitive in it. so that the kids would learn the words, you know. It was all repetitive, like Dick, Jane, and Sally see the dog, and Dick, Jane, and Sally do this, and Dick, Jane, and Sally something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's boring, so boring, that I used to sit and read the old books to my sisters and brothers so that they got to learn something instead of all of this Dick, Jane, and Sally stuff, because it was just so boring.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we used to have a lot of competitions in school. We had, and we had to learn our cursive writing.
Mm-hmm.
And our cursive writing was in our books, and we had to learn to the circles and, all the different strokes first, and then you learned your cursive writing. And so I got so that I could write really. I had really good penmanship. Mm-hmm. And one of the competitions that we had every year was penmanship competition. So I used to win the prize for my penmanship competition every year.
Nice.
Yeah. And then we had another thing was wildflowers in the spring. And we would have a chart. And we would have our names on the chart and the dates. Well, a place for the dates. Mm-hmm. And so on. We'd have our names on the chart. And so whoever found the first violet, bring it in, show it to the teacher, get your name checked off and the date that you found it, and so on the chart. So I was lucky. So it was me and another family that lived on these long side roads, which our ditches were like the flower gardens for us. Mm-hmm. The people all along the main road didn't have as many flowers, wildflowers, as we did. Mm-hmm. So it would be like, if we found a wildflower that hadn't been listed yet, we'd get to school in a real as fast as we could go to get our name checked off before the other folks that had the long road got there and got theirs in. So it would be like the first dandelion, the first violet, the first, daisies weren't out yet until summer. You couldn't bring in grown flowers like daffodils or anything like that. It had to be wildflowers. So it would be like the first strawberry blossom, wild strawberry blossom, all these kinds of things. And we'd have a great big chart, put the flower in there and the date, and people would get a prize at the end of the year. And then we'd have perfect attendance. So one year I decided, I think I was about in maybe 4th grade or 5th, maybe 5th grade, decided that I was going to have perfect attendance. Mm-hmm. I wanted perfect attendance to get that award. And I decided in my stubborn mind I was going to do it. And oh my word, I mean, I'd be out in a blizzard, or I'd be out in a rainstorm or a windstorm. And I can remember my mom saying, "You're not going out in this," and I said, "Oh yes, I am." Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I got perfect attendance that year. I was determined I was going to do it. I think that it was 4th grade. I think it was 4th grade that my sister started school. Let me think now. Trying to think. Yeah, I think it was 4th grade. My sister started school in 1st grade, and there were only 2 kids in that grade. Mm. So the next year, they decided that they were going to move. I'm trying to remember these years now, because what year was it that I did? Had to be 5th grade. I'm trying to think now. Because this particular year, I got hepatitis. Oh. And I was so sick. Mm. And I think that had to be, maybe it was 3rd grade that I got the hepatitis. I was probably 9, maybe. And I was so sick. And they took me to the doctor. And the doctor said she has to be quarantined. And she has to be put to bed. And she can't have any fat. No fat. And you know me and my butter.
That's been difficult.
No fat. And a lot of sugar. And I wasn't really a sweet person.
Really?
But this was all for my liver.
Yeah, okay.
And so, anyway, they quarantined me downstairs in a corner of the living room with my own bed and my own dishes and everything, away from all the other kids. The kids couldn't get on the bed with me or anything else. The little, you know, I had all these little brothers and sisters. But what really happened as far as school went was there were these 2 older girls. Now, 8th grade was still in school then. Yeah, so it must have been 3rd grade. 8th grade was still in the school. These 2 twin sisters decided, and the teacher said it was them that decided this, not her. She went to the teacher and said that they wanted to take my homework to me and that they would tutor me while I was sick, because I was homesick about 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Long time.
6 or 8 weeks. I can't remember exactly. It was a long time anyway. 6 or 8 weeks. So they would come and they would bring me my homework for the week. And they would teach me, show me what I needed to do and what I needed to study. And then they would come back the next week, take the homework back, bring me the new homework for the week. And they did this all the time I was sick. It was 6 or 8 weeks. And so I kept up on all my schoolwork and all my homework. And of course I didn't have much else to do because I was in bed sick. I couldn't, you know, I wasn't up and about doing much. So I had lots of time to read and study and so on. And so that year I won the award for the highest grades in the class, in the school.
And you missed the 6 to 8 weeks.
And I missed 6 or 8 weeks, and the kids were all upset.
The twins are probably like, I did that.
She's been out sick, and she hasn't been to school for 8 weeks during this year, and she gets the highest grades. Well, I did.
But you still did the work.
I did the work. So I have those girls to thank for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after I got back to school, the teacher told me that was their idea to do that. And I, you know, she would get my work all ready and they'd take it. Yeah.
That's really
and
nice.
walk out to our place.
Who was it?
It was Mary Stoddard's sisters. Yeah. Yeah, Jean and Joan, they were twins.
So they were in contact with you.
They were in contact, but they weren't in, you know, like they'd sit by the bed and tell me, okay, this is what you have to do, and this, that, and
so
the other.
Like
they weren't,
close.
yeah.
No
They weren't close. There was no contact as
Okay.
far as, you know, yeah.
So you were still basically quarantined.
I was quarantined. Yeah, I was quarantined.
Yeah.
And when they started testing people in the province. I was the only person in that part of the province that got it. And there was only one other person way up in the northern part of the province that got hepatitis that year. So
was it a visitor of some sort that didn't live around there, maybe, that you came in contact with?
don't know where I got it or how or why.
Maybe somebody was a carrier. They just didn't get sick.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened while I was in school there was the big polio.
Oh.
Yeah, polio was a big scare. And we only had one person in our class, in our group, in our community that got polio. And he lived next door to the school, and he ended up in the hospital with it. He didn't end up, which a lot of the people in those days ended up in what they called an iron lung.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of those. I've
Yeah.
seen them, actually. I've seen people in them, yeah.
Yeah. He didn't end up in that, but he, it did affect his leg.
Yeah.
To where he had a limp.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards. It affected the growth in one of his legs. But he came through it okay.
That's
And then they came out with the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody was rushing to get the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
We were lined up
Mm-hmm.
everywhere for, to get the vaccines. And I think that it was 2. The first one that they gave, I think, was a shot, like a vaccination. And the second one, I think, was a sugar cube. Like they put it on a sugar cube and you ate the sugar cube. And then my sister had a problem with her tonsils and her adenoids.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided that her and I had to go and have our tonsils and adenoids out.
You too?
Yeah, me too.
Even though you didn't have a problem?
I didn't have a problem. I didn't really have a problem.
Was that normal then, to take out stuff that, even though it's not an issue?
I don't know. I don't know. Because she needed it, I needed it too, I guess.
Okay.
So we did. We went and we had our tonsils and adenoids out. And I can remember in those days, they were still giving ether as anesthesia.
Yeah.
And I could never stand anything over my face.
Mm.
And they come in and they put a face cloth over my face and said to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, of course I went right out cold. So, but I can remember saying, oh, I can't stand that face cloth over my face. And then I was out cold and I, forgot about that. So that was okay. We got home. We were in the hospital for that. And I don't know if we were in for a day or overnight. I can't remember. But we're home. And we're in bed at night sleeping. The next night or 2 after. And my sister gets up and sits up in the bed. We slept together, and she sits up in the bed, and she woke me up, and she was bleeding.
Oh.
And the bed was full of blood. So she was hemorrhaging from that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mom and Dad got her together and got her to the hospital, and they had to pack her. Yeah, they had to pack her to stop that bleeding. So that was quite traumatic.
I bet.
Yeah, that was quite traumatic. One of those things. Unexpected and kind of shocking at the same time, and you wake up and you're in that situation. It was, scary.
Yeah.
We had all kinds of things happen there at the school. We'd have Arbor Day in the spring. Arbor Day, we always planted a tree on Arbor Day.
At the school?
At the school. We always planted a tree. But before we could plant the tree, we had to clean the school, wash the windows, clean our desks out after the winter, And of course, everybody's desk would be a total disaster, full of papers and trash and whatever.
What were your desks like?
The desks that we had were quite modern because they were modernizing everything then.
Yeah.
They were a wooden desk with an armrest and a desk front.
Around to the front.
Yeah, and the drawer underneath. And so the drawers were quite deep and quite, deep as the seat. So you keep all your books and your notebooks and everything in there. If you wrote on your desk, you were in big trouble. So they would make you wash. We had to wash our desks. Arbor Day, we had to, probably a couple of times a year we had to wash our desks. But Arbor Day, we had to wash our desks, and then they had to be inspected to make sure that you hadn't, been carving things.
Etching your name in there with a knife.
Right. And then, we would have like kind of a picnic outside and plant a tree, and, Arbor Day, we always looked forward to Arbor Day. And then we would have May Day. May Day was usually a nice warm day that, and we'd all go outside and play games and things like that. Like the 1st of really spring.
Mm-hmm.
Be kind of like a holiday at school, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We had May baskets.
May baskets.
Oh yes, May baskets were a big thing in May. So we would make May baskets, and I found out later that Carleton County, New Brunswick, is the only place that made May baskets like we did. And we'd make May baskets out of tissue paper.
Mm-hmm.
So you take the tissue paper, the colored tissue paper.
Yep.
And like all your spring colors, like your pinks and your yellows and your lavenders and all of that, and make these May baskets. So you would fold it so that it would come down to a point,
Mm-hmm.
over and over, so it would come down to a point. And then you'd cut in along that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you would unfold it and hold it up, it would kind of stretch down and be, we'll have to make May baskets sometime. In May this year we'll make May baskets. And so we would put, you know, some people would put, depending what you were going to do with these.
Mm.
So what we would do in our neighborhood, we would hang a May basket on someone's door,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd run away and hide. Right? And it was usually the girls or the boys
Mm-hmm.
hanging the May baskets, and then run away and hide, and whoever it was that you hung this for
Mm-hmm.
would chase you. And if it was a girl or a boy, they'd kiss them.
Oh.
If they caught you, they'd kiss you. Us 4 kids that were in the same class,
Uh-huh.
all us girls would be hanging May baskets for Jamie on his door.
Because you claimed him as
We
yours.
claimed him as our boyfriend.
Oh
Poor
my
Jamie.
gosh, that's funny.
So-
Poor Jamie, is that what you said? I'm sure he was in his glory.
I don't know. But anyway, we would. So if you were hanging this for someone, you would put candy in the bottom.
Oh, okay.
If you were just making them for decorative, because we would make them and hang them around the house too, you know,
Yeah.
we would just put a little stone in the bottom that would hold them,
Hold the weight.
because they were kind of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hold them down.
Take up the slack.
Hold them open. So-
Yeah.
and the pretty colors would show through. Like you'd usually use a couple of colors,
Mm-hmm.
so that you might have lavender and pink, or you know, blue and yellow, or you know, colors. And they were really pretty. So we do the May basket thing anytime in May.
So it was
That
had
could
to be
happen.
in the month of May.
Yes.
So hence the name.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were May baskets. After I grew up and left there, nobody ever made May baskets that I knew of. You know, it's like, oh,
Huh.
May baskets.
Yeah.
Yeah, places that I moved to, like when we moved to Rhode Island, or when we moved out of Williamstown.
She missed all the kisses.
I missed the kisses from all those boys that I hung May baskets for.
I don't blame you.
It was funny because one year my brother hung a May basket for one of the boys
Mm-hmm.
and ran. And the boy ran after him and muckled him in the ditch and kissed him.
Hey, rules are rules, man.
I know. It was so funny.
That's funny.
They're rolling around in the ditch. Oh my God. We always had a ball, you know, school was a blast. And so the original school was on, well, going up the road from our place was on the left-hand side of the road. And they decided that they wanted to build a new school. So they wanted to move that old school. So the WI, which is the women's group there, Williams Institute, decided that they would buy that building from the school department and or school committee, and that they would make it into a community center, community hall. They decided that they would buy that building and move it across the road. So one of the neighbors owned the property across the road from the school. So they gave, I don't know if it was a quarter of an acre, some little piece of ground over there. I think it was a quarter of an acre or something that they gave to put this building on. And my uncles had a construction business going in Woodstock, no less, which is 20 miles away. They brought their equipment all up there and moved the school from one side of the road to the other.
So your family had a hand in moving the school?
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And the building is still there.
Wow.
It's still owned by the Women's Institute. And that's where I was going to the Women's Institute when I was there living.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's still there. They call it now the Williamstown Hall. At that time, it was called the Community Hall. And we had all kinds of functions there. That was the community center. We'd have big Halloween parties there, big Christmas parties there. Sometimes the community would put on a play. I remember one year my uncle and his friend, it was where I used to go for the cookies and stuff to that family. Him, their son and my uncle, Arthur, were friends. And they both got into the play. And they were both dressed as women. And they were working in the kitchen in this play. And I remember my uncle was so funny because he was kneading bread. And what he had was a pillow for the bread.
He was kneading a pillow.
This white pillow, and it was hysterical. And he's kneading the bread, and you punch it, you know. It was a riot. So all of these, it was all usually the men that were doing these plays, and it was a riot. But
sounds like a lot of fun, though.
We had strawberry shortcake parties there, and in the spring, we had pie socials, which all the women would bring like a lunch in a basket and a pie. And the men would bid on the pies, and whoever's pie they got to eat with the woman that made it. So they would be, you know, who brought that pie? You know, they were trying, you know, who brought that pie? And trying to find out, and it was, you know, it was kind of like nobody. It was anonymous, you know, anonymous, like, you know. So it's like all the pies showed up. Well, we have an apple pie, you know, and this apple pie was baked today, and, you know, they'd go on and on. What do you offer for this? And so they'd be sitting around there saying, who brought that pie? To find out who they wanted to sit with for dinner, right?
Yeah.
It was a riot.